Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching me from. Welcome to today's episode of Sedat HR Digest, your number one HR webinar. This is a platform where we learn, unlearn, and relearn. If you are looking for an organization, a strong HR consulting firm to help you with all your HR processes, this afternoon I recommend to you Sedat Consult. You can sleep and say that will get everything sorted for you. It is your number one HR consulting firm. We are into HR services, your salary survey, salary grading and structure, trainings, talk about anything leadership, anything HR. Said that consult is there to give you that helping hand. And I'm glad to mention that said that consult is our number one sponsor for our webinar Sunday after Sunday. Thank you so much to the CEO of Sedat Consult. We are very glad that you keep sponsoring us. All right, so today we would want to discuss a very important topic. Many people wonder how they would lead, how do they move from one level to the other, and when they even get a seat at the table, how do they use their influence as HR practitioners? How do they blend their influence with that of the executives? How do they get the executive board? How do they get all the people sitting at the table to do what is required, to do what will move the business forward? How do they even use their expertise to help business achieve? Afternoon. Pardon me for my voice, and I hope you can hear me very well. If you are joining us for the first time today, I want to say a very big thank you to you. Thank you for joining us. I want you to drop your name and your location in the comment section. We will duly acknowledge you. Today, our guest is not a stranger on this platform. She's been here a number of times, and all the time she's been with us, we've enjoyed her session. We've learned a lot, and it's been insightful with her on this platform. She is an HR advisor, a career development speaker, and a mentor. She is strategically focused and a result-oriented professional. She has over a decade and a half years of experience working in fast-paced multinational and private organizations across several industry. She's been in the social enterprise. She's been with the agri sector before. She's been in the management consulting space, power, energy, IT, fintech, insurance, healthcare, financial services, and the FMCG. She is a trainer and was named as one of Africa's top 10 exceptional HR leaders in 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to bring with you an expert in the field that we want to be talking about, or the topic we will be handling today, and that is leading up, how HR leaders can build strategic influence with executive leadership. Leading up, how HR leaders can build strategic influence with executive leadership. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome into the studios our guest for today, Madam Abigail Ansanwe. Hi, Abigail.
Hi, Patience. Good day to everyone. Thank you for having me once again.
It's a pleasure to always have you, and I have been blessed to have hosted you several times, and I know what you bring to the table, and we also see the good work you do in the space. We monitor you, we follow you in the social media space, and from the team at Sedat HR Digest, we want to say congratulations for being named as one of Africa's top 10 HR leaders. We are proud of you. Today, we are looking at leading up, how HR leaders can build strategic influence with executive leadership. We know you are well prepared for us. And so I wouldn't want to waste your time. We just want to give you the platform so that you can move straight into the session. So the platform is all yours. Have your way, and we are here. And viewers, when Abigail is done, we would give you the opportunity to ask your questions. And so if you have any question, feel free to drop it in the comment section. And when she's done with the presentation, we will be taking your questions and she would help us address them. So, Abigail, you are welcome. The floor is open and we are ready to hear what you have for us today.
Okay, all right. Thank you once again, Patience, and to the Sedat HR Digest team. It's a pleasure to be here. I have a presentation, so I'm going to walk us through my thinking and some of the principles that I practically apply often in my HR career and in my role. And then we get right into it. And as Patience mentioned, please, I would want you to ask me a lot of questions. Okay, so at the end of the section, you can ask all your questions and then I'll be happy to address them. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay. Um, okay. All right. Okay. So we've already done the purpose and introduction, so there's no need to waste your time on it. But the main rationale or the reason why we are having this section is for us to learn some of the principles that we as HR professionals can leverage in our day-to-day work to build strategic influence with the leaders that we are working with. Many a times, HR departments or teams are seen as administrative functions. And so when the business is having very high level strategic meetings, sometimes the HR leader is left out, but you find other leaders being invited, like the finance leader, the commercial leader, and the other leaders that the business in quotes assumes as more valued driven or more strategic. But the days of those time or those periods have ended. Now, HR departments or teams should not be seen as just typical support functions, but then strategic functions that on a daily basis help the organizations to move on to the next level. Because most organizations at the center of it is people, and the one department that manages these people is the HR department. So when it comes to meetings where business leaders are taking decisions about next year, plans for expansion, how the business can achieve its profitability target or whatever target that is set for itself, the HR leader needs to be present. But then how do we build that focus or that muscle to be invited for such meetings? So I'm going to briefly describe or explain what leading up means. It's basically influencing upwards in a proactive manner. So influencing whoever you are working with. In some organizations where your leadership team are the C-suite, being able to influence them. If your organization is a company where you don't really have C-suites, but let's say you have directors or senior managers or whatever the leadership team of that organization is, leading up means that how can you as an HR leader influence the leaders in the organizations that you are working with? It also means offering strategic support, not just offering strategic influence, not just support, and then building trust with the C-suite or the senior leadership team of your various organizations. So now the next thing I would want us to look at as we try to understand the topic better is to think through what do we think keeps our C-suite up at night. So if you directly report to your CEO, In some organizations where you have an MD that you are reporting to, or you report to the general manager or the country director of your enterprises, let's start reflecting. What do we think are some of the pain points or the things that these leaders have sleepless nights upon, or what are their focus? I just try to list it in 3 different brackets. The first one that comes to mind is growth and profit. This applies to profit-making organizations. But if your organization is an NGO, then whatever their mandate is, and growth, how the organization can grow from one stage to the other, is what keeps your C-suite up at night. So they're either focusing on market share, revenue growth, EBITDA, how to improve their EBITDA, their net profit. These are what keeps the C-suite up at night. Principally or generally, what keeps the C-suite up at night is not our employee engagement event that we want to plan, or not increasing the salaries of the workforce. All these things come to support, but what really keep them up at night is growth and how to make profits, principally. And then also, what also keeps them up at night, especially in our age of digitization and technology, is risk mitigation. So most organizations are very mindful of their corporate branding, of their public image, cybersecurity issues, reputational issues. Worrying about all these risks is what keeps them up at night. The third bracket that I try to put it under, speed and agility. You see, the business market is moving very fast. There are a lot of competitions that comes up every single day, competing for the same customer base or the same clientele that your organization is also into. So mostly what keeps our C-suite up at night is how can the organizations become more fast and more abreast with whatever is happening? How can they understand competitors? How can they understand their clientele, their interests, their likes? How can they develop more products and solutions to meet their needs? These are the 3 major brackets that keeps most C-suites up at night, or most leadership teams up at night. So now that we have this understanding, HR principally, our mandate is people, right? But people is not the end goal of an HR department. The end goal of every HR department is to be able to support our organizations to achieve their mandate, to achieve their mission, and then to work towards their where they would want to go to. So this is our mandate as HR. But then how do we then, with this understanding, or now understanding the things that keeps our C-suites up at night, how can we position our HR departments in a very strategic way to ensure that when these C-suites want somebody to discuss issues with, they call us in to the table for a thorough discussion. The new mandate of HR. I've already briefly mentioned that the era of pure administrative HR function is over. Most forward-thinking organizations are no longer asking HR to simply keep the lights on. So just do our recruitment, ensure legal compliance, benefits, payroll. If your HR function manages payroll, that is not now the focus. Though it is very important and essential that we do all these functions of HR. Most organizations are now demanding that the HR teams act as the architects of work, which means that simply shaping workforce planning, designing productive work environments, enabling the organization's future, and a whole lot more. But the key drivers that mostly happen is complexity. As we are all aware, the world of work is becoming more complex, which means that new management policies have to be developed to be able to support our organizations. The other driver is scarcity. Now, the war for talents has shifted. Companies are now not fighting for who can hire the best talent in the field, but then skills. How can they hire employees that have the right skill set to move their organizations to the next level? So now most organizations are now hiring for skill-based competencies and not just hiring like who won an award in this industry or that, even though all of those are important. But what are the skills that you are bringing on board when you join the organizations to help them achieve their profitability targets or whatever targets that they have? And then technology. AI is reshaping roles faster. Sometimes when you are developing a role and you agree on the job description for the role, and the role is a hard to find role, by the time you would have even found the candidates per your old job description. Sometimes if you do not take care, the role has evolved over months. So these are all the key drivers that are shaping the current mandate of HR department. Now let's look at the perception gap. Generally, how does HR department see ourselves? How do we see ourselves? Or how do the C-suites or the leaders that we are working with see us? They mostly see us as we are the guardians of culture. So when it comes to company culture, they say go to HR, or they expect HR department to fix culture. But then if you are in the HR space, you realize that culture is not a single mandate of an HR department. Culture starts from the top. Culture starts from the CEO down to the C-suite, then it comes down to every employee. So culture is not a department alone mandate, which is only built by the HR, even though the HR team shape culture and guides, but culture is built by the everyday interactions, how line managers treat their employees, how we provide support, how we even assess our employees in our compensation philosophy, structure. These all shape culture. And then they mostly also see HR as the department that ensures fairness and then compliance. So when an employee is not doing the right thing, sometimes instead of the line manager to correct or to guide, they sometimes say go to HR and let HR handle that. That is what generally most leadership teams or what most managers see HR. Then we support the employees. So sometimes most organizations think HR departments are just for the employees. So there is this war. Managers believe HR is for the employees because you mostly go to managers with what employees want. Oh, let's do this and that for employees. Employees also, on the other hand, sometimes think HR departments are for managers, they are for the management, they don't understand us, they don't listen to us, and the war continues. And then the other perception that generally HR departments have, or the C-suite have about HR, is that they are focused on just activity. They know how to plan events, activity days. Today, let's do that. They are not focusing on what will drive our business profitability targets or growth. So they are slowing us down. So this is it. Now, how executives see HR? We slow down their processes. HR teams don't understand them, and then we are just a cost center. So whenever we come to them, it's about the organization spending more on people, and they are very bureaucratic. And now let's look at the 3 pillars of HR influence. Now that I have tried to break down some of the perceptions that happen, what are the 3 pillars of HR influence? Basically, for an HR leader to have the trust that as the CEO or the C-suite need from to pull us into their meetings or into important matters or discussions that are happening. There are three pillars of HR influence that we would have to look at. The first one is expert power. For us to break the barrier and move into the space where we are not just seen as a support function or an admin function, but then they call us into important discussions, is when we have built the trust and confidence that the core mandate of HR, we are able to do it and we have done it perfectly. Which means that as HR leaders, knowing our craft is very important. Understanding the labor laws of your country, understanding the best practice when it comes to recruitment, to properly onboarding new employees, to compensation and benefits, to L&D, to employee relations, employee engagement, all the primary functions of HR, we would have to master it. Because if you do not prove that our core mandate is something that we can do with ease, then they cannot trust us with an extra responsibility of now thinking outside the domains of HR and thinking business. So we have to demonstrate our expert power. The next one or the next pillar of HR influence is informational power. HR departments have a lot of information. We have a lot of essential information from our employees. We have access to data that unfortunately sometimes we do not use, or we don't know how to leverage them. We know who is leaving. We should know our high potential employees in our organizations. And we should also know how much the market is paying for these talents. We have a lot of data that if we are able to utilize it, would give us an influence to the issues that we are trying to break through. Then the other one is relational power. You see, the strength of our internal networks. HR departments don't work in isolation. Everything that we do is for people, and we can perfectly do that if we are able to build internal influences within the organization that we work with. So generally, you can just identify in your organization who are the people that have a voice as an HR leader. Who are the people that, for instance, if your CEO or your country director wants to discuss things with, who do they go to? Is it the commercial head? Just try and list them down. Or is it a sales manager? Is it a finance director? Look at all the people who have a voice in your organization and strategize and plan. How can you get all these people on board to your side? So that if there's any major initiative or plan that you would want to present, and you are confident that if you are able to win these people on your side, it is very easy to have the CEO or the country directors or the country managers approval. So these are the three pillars of HR influence. Then another one is to speak the language of our business. As I mentioned, HR, we don't work in isolation. And everything that we do is to support our organizations to achieve their mandate, to achieve their yearly targets. So we should learn how to speak the language of the business. So for instance, I just listed two things that we can probably stop saying, as literal as it may be. So for instance, we need to improve morale because people are unhappy. Sometimes you hear some HR teams say that, oh, let's do this engagement activity because our people are not happy, and full stop, you don't proceed. In all honesty, most companies don't care about if people are happy or not, but they care about profits. So you knowing that your businesses care about profits, how can you reframe your sentence to we need to improve morale because our people are unhappy, to something else that will let the C-suite stop and listen to you and think about what you're about to say? The other one, we need a new training program because everyone else has one. I mean, so Every organization has a training calendar that they run, but how does it really concern us? You need to sell the value of why training your employees is going to be at the benefit of the organization. So another way that you can say, okay, so the first example I gave, we need to improve morale because our people are unhappy. You can just rephrase it. We need to improve morale because it is affecting our employees from meeting their monthly targets. And if you have the data, quantify it. So last quarter, we lost revenue by, let's say, 5% because our employees felt A, B, and C was not done. But I've done a little focus and a little survey with them. I've spoken to their employee leaders, and these are the things that they are not happy about. And from the intel that I have, if we do A, B, and C, it's going to solve that. It's really going to help us not just gain back the 5% revenue loss, but rather increase productivity by, let's say, 7% or 8%. If you are a C-suite or if you are the CEO, this is what you want to hear, so that you start paying attention to your HR lead. So some of the things that we can start saying, attrition in sales is costing us. So you have quantified a 20 million Ghana cedis annually. But then if we do these engagement activities for the sales team, it will reduce this by 30%. You've killed it. You are letting your C-suite know that if they invest this amount of money that they can use to drive market expansion, or that they can give as profit to their shareholders, if they spend it on an HR activity, it is not a waste, it is not a cost, it's rather going to increase productivity that will help them achieve their revenue targets by this margin. And this is what they want to hear. Okay, the other one, and this upskilling initiative will reduce our reliance on expensive contractors. So all examples, if you're able to train your employees better, they're able to deliver more value, they're able to meet their targets, exceed their targets, and then drive more profits for the organization. So these are some of the thinking. I just want us to start rethinking our role as HR, that we are not just support function that is just there to support with all the everyday tasks. Let's go beyond that and think more business, because really that's what most organizations have been established for. Then there's this thing I call the strategic alignment, the golden thread that we have to find. Okay, so the general concept is that you should find a thread that is going to link every HR initiative that you would want your organization to invest in. Find a thread that will link it to the drivers, your organizational drivers. Okay, always find the thread. If it's going to be, let's hire 10 more people for this team, what is the bottom? How is it going to impact the bottom line? How is it going to impact EBITDA? How is it going to give your organizations more profitability? So try and always find the golden thread. Okay, so for instance, if your company's, let's say, goal for 2026 is to expand into Asia, so that is one of your growth targets for next year. Now, this is how you as an HR leader can translate it. So one of your company's goal is to expand into the Asian market. So now as HR, how can you translate this into the initiative that you want to run for 2026? So in this case, when most companies are expanding, sometimes they move some of their talent from one continent to the other, whilst they hire for locals in those countries. So then it's mostly would come with a leadership training. But then don't just say I need budget to run my general leadership trainings that I do. No, there's a kind of training that if you are moving an employees from one continent to the other, it's very essential that you do, which is a which is a cultural integration training for them to understand the culture of the Asian market, how their people behave, their working conditions, what might engage an employee in Ghana might not engage an employee in Asia. You have to look at all the various trainings that you can do if you are going to be transferring an employee from one continent to the other. So always try and find the golden thread. This salary increase that you want your company to do per this margin, what is the golden thread? How can you link it to what the C-suite want to hear? Profitability, if that is, or customer acquisition, or market expansion, or whatever it is. If you sit back and think through, try and find a thread that you can link to your HR initiatives and what the business wants to focus on. And then we come to the aspect of data-driven storytelling. Data-driven storytelling. As I mentioned, we have a lot of data. But then with all the data that we have, we should not just dump it. So we should not just dump it as it is. So the what, always look at the what, the so what, and the noun what. So the basic line of data analytics is that if it is about turnover, people leaving your organization periodically, you can just say turnover is 15%. And you end it there. You've not said anything to your C-suite. The turnover is 15%. I mean, so what? You see, so then proceed to the so what. It's 15% overall. But then, based on your data analytics, you realize that it is not turnover is not just 15%, but then 40% among your top performers are leaving the organization. Every C-suite leader will stop and think, if 15% of our workers are leaving, but then majority of them who are leaving, if it's 50 and above percent, or even if it's 40%, are among our top engineers, or our top salespeople, or our top finance people leaving, then they start thinking. And you don't also just end it there. You can then progress to the next stage. Then what can you then do with this information? Okay, so we need to do A, B, and C. We need to leverage this. We need to do this and that and that and that. So data storytelling, bring life into the data that we have. And metrics that actually matter. We talk about HR analytics. Now we have a lot of analytics, or a lot of things, metrics that we can measure in HR. And really, sometimes it becomes very overwhelming. So personally, I've tried to look at what are the key things that, if let's say my CEO is going for a board meeting and he needs HR data, what are the key things that I can provide to make his life easier? Or what are the things that, mostly when you are applying for grants or for donor funding or any other thing, they request for? So if I'm trying to free up my time on most of the other HR metrics that are a lot, and I just have to select a handful of them, what are the topmost that I would go for based on what my business needs? Total cost of staff. So here is not just talking about just the cost of staff on payroll, but whatever makes up the total reward package of an employee. So you can look at their gross salary, their employer portion of their pension contribution, their medicals, the airtime, the rent allowance, the full allowance, everything that you provide the employee that can directly quantifiable. That is your actual cost to company that you are looking at, not just payroll cost. And now you just don't stop at cost to company because it is just a figure. Now, how do you compare your cost to company to your revenue? For instance, the monthly revenue that your business is generating and the monthly cost to company, how does it compare? So now you're moving deeper. This is what your CEO would really want to know. How does the cost that we incur on our staff compare to our monthly revenue? And then progressing further, how do the costs that we incur on our staff affect our gross profit? So cost to company, so cost to company versus gross profits. How does it compare? And then you can also look at the growth rate of your staff. So how is your staff growing? Your headcount and cost, how is it growing month on month? HR analytics, very important. Some companies have built a dashboard or have an HRS system where it has a dashboard component that every time it is giving you live information. But however, if you don't have an HRS and you have an IT department, you can work with them to develop an HR dashboard that you can be tracking periodically. And then you also have another bracket where I have classified as workforce performance analytics. So here is not just the general workforce analytics, but now you're looking at performance indicators or performance thresholds. So mostly the workforce productivity index. It's basically a measure of the revenue per your employees over, you are looking at some period of time and then times 100. So your workforce, how productive is your employees on the, if you want to track it monthly or quarterly or annually, so the revenue per your employee divided by your revenue per employee for the previous quarter times 100. You can research more about the formula and how to track it. And then you also have to look at the distribution of your performance ratings. So if you are doing annual performance appraisals, or for some companies that do it every 6 months, look at how the ratings or how the distribution is. Most of your workforce are the top 10%, are they in the middle percent, or are they low performers? And what can you do to move them up? So those who are just meeting expectations, what initiative or plans can you do to move them to exceeding? For those who are bringing their team's productivity down, put them on PIP if that is it, or what them to improve or to grow. All these things, start thinking about it. And then you have another metric that is more advanced, if I'll put it that way, and that is the employee lifetime value. You know, most in the marketing department, they mostly measure the lifetime value of customers. So over the customer's lifetime, what is the sales that the company can get out of them? In HR as well, you can also look at the lifetime value of our employees and what benefits or contributions they bring to your organization. So basically, there are, I think, 2 or 3 ways of doing that. But what I basically use is just the annual revenue per employees over the average of the annual cost to company of the same employees times the average tenure. So that will just give you a simple indicator of your employee lifetime value. And I do it monthly. You do it, annually. And then the employee engagement and retention, to some metrics that if you just have to choose 2 of them, you can focus on, is the regrettable loss rates. So don't just track attrition, as I mentioned. If the attrition is negative attrition, people who are already underperforming are leaving. It doesn't hurt the organization's EBITDA. No. But if your higher performers are leaving, or those who are really driving the business growth agenda are leaving, then that is where the challenge is. And that's where your initiative would have to be focused on. And then the employee net promoter score, how likely are your employees to promote the organization? Mostly measured on the scale of 1 to 10. So you can look at all these metrics. Now, financial literacy. Financial literacy. As HR professionals, as I mentioned, most organizations are either here to make profits or they are here to achieve their mandate or whatever it is. You need to understand at least the basic financial terms that the organization is looking at. So when the CEO and the finance team and the operations team and the commercial team have a meeting, what are some of the indicators that they look at? Just every organization is different, but then basically you need to understand some financial terms. You can let your finance department teach you basically when they are running reports for the executive, what are the things that they would want to look out for, and then let them explain it to you, and also read more, read about it, and how does it impact the organization. So I just try to put a few one here: OPEX, operational expenditure, capital expenditure, how is even headcounts funded in your organization. These are all the things that you can start looking at. Revenue per employee, to help you know whether your workforce is becoming more efficient or not. What is your company's monthly cash flow? Is your company generating enough cash flow to fund itself, or their cash is tight? How will it even affect the company's ability to pay salaries or do all the other HR initiatives? So start thinking about some of these things. The budget forecast, the current budget that the company is running with, how does it compare to actual? What are the indicators saying? Why is your budget not being met? Look at all the various aspects. Just try to think about it, to understand it broadly, so that when your leadership team is speaking to these matters, HR also have something to say, and we just don't sit down and be watching them. And then forecast the outlook. So all these things, generally, the principle here is that understand what is driving the financial achievements in your organization, and understand the key things that your leadership team discuss, and try to relate it. How can the HR department support the business to achieve their yearly targets? Now, stakeholder mapping. I try to tackle it briefly, but for HR to be able to make an impact and effectively lead up, there are some mappings that you would have to do, generally classified under 3. Identify who your champions are. So champions are basically leaders who already trust the value of HR. They trust us, they know what we can do. And so if you've identified such leaders in your business, then arm them with the data to advocate for you and to advocate for the activities of the HR department, even when you are not in the room. So identify who your champions are. And then also map your skeptics. There are a lot of leaders who don't value the work of HR. Sometimes they can confidently say HR is just here to support. HR is just an admin function. HR is just here. We are the one bringing revenue. We are the one doing ABC. So also map your skeptics. Which leaders in your business see HR as mere admin? Which leaders in your business see HR as just a support function, or a function that is not really strategic? Identify them. And after you have identified them, what do you then do? How can you then move them gradually to becoming your promoters? Basically, what you can do is to look at their pain points. So this leader who is so skeptical about HR, what do I think I can do ethically to move him or her to advocate for HR? Every leader wants their life to be easy, right? So look at their pain points. You can have lunches with them. If your company has a canteen, you can go for lunch with them, go to their office, try to understand what they are doing, and in a soft manner, try to sell HR softly, and progressively, if they now begin to see value and then begin to see the impact that you are making, will progressively, but I know it's not an easy thing to do, but you would have to try, because you can't just leave them out because they are skeptical about HR. And then you have to also look at another mapping, which are your connectors. So the middle level managers that you have, the managers who are managing various teams, how do you also bring them on board? Because at the end of the day, they are the people managing the teams, not you. So how do you ensure that you are using them to test your ideas, understanding their pain points, having training sections for them to make their work easier, guiding them on the right path? Connectors, how do you leverage them? So 3 mappings: your champions, your skeptics, and then your connectors. And then building trust. There's this principle I just came back with. I thought I should just put it here. And it says that trust is the currency of influence. Without it, your data is just noise and your strategy is just a suggestion. And I really thought about it. I said, this is very key. You see, sometimes if you are not careful in HR, you'll be saying yes to everything that management wants to do. HR, let's do this. Yes, I will do. HR, let's move this. Yes, I will do. HR, ABC, everything is yes, 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 yes. Unfortunately, if you really want to build trust, you do not have to say yes to everything if you believe that this yes is going to cost the organization dearly. But how can you just say no? There is a way to go about it, and then you get to it in a breath. So now the acts of pushback, avoiding the yes trap. There are some times that I have said no to some things, and I've tried to explain my points. And sometimes I the business agrees with what I'm saying, and then we told down the line. Sometimes if I really convince them and they don't do, on a few occasions, what I have said happens to be what was it. And then they come back and say, oh, but you said that. I was like, you see, but I wasn't just able to convince them for them to buy my idea at that point in time. So I have tried to go out of it. How do you just say no? And not just say no as literal as it is. So let's say you're an HR department. You know your business focus for 2026. And when you try to see what the HR department can do to support your business, you realize that there are 5 key initiatives that the HR team would have to run. And those are stretch targets. And for you to be able to achieve that, you need all your HR team on board. But then here come January, and one of the business leaders comes and say, oh, HR, I want us to rather do this and this and that because I believe it's going to A, B, and C. But you know that your hands are full. Your team is full. And if you don't take care, you are going to overstretch them and they are going to burn out, and some of them would leave. But how do you just say no to this executive who has come to, in quotes, turn your direction to something else that he would want to do? How do you just say no as an HR person? One thing that I have learned over time to do is not just to say no, but to say no with a reason, or to say no with how it's going to affect something. So you can say generally that we can prioritize like this thing you want us to do, but that will mean that, and then pick 1 or 2 very key things that you know the business would really want to achieve. It's going to rather to take our hands off, and we will not be able to do A, B, and C. So now a trade-off. Do you want me to focus on A, to do now, or focus on A, B, and C that will drive the revenue target? And if you're able to speak like this in a very convincing and very neutral and well-composed manner, most meaningful executives will rethink and say, do you know what, let's move this aside, focus on what you are doing. So you've been able to say no, but in a way that has even built more trust between you and your leadership team. Now, overcoming the admin trap. I have already explained this, but you would have to remember that you are the expert on most of the You are the expert on the most important or one of the most important assets of every organization, which is people. You have the data that they don't have. They need you, your business leaders need you to solve their talents headache. That will help them meet their targets. So now let's start rethinking about our role. Think about HR as business drivers, not just there to provide administrative support. Okay, think about it broadly. I've seen some HR leaders, even at the level of leadership, who are still running around taking attendance sheets, checking what the cleaner is doing, monitoring security. As the HR leader, you waste most of your time doing day-to-day administrative tasks, and then you lose sight of the big picture. If admin is part of the HR function in your department, have a competent person who can do that so that you can free up your time and focus on what is more important. Now, these are some of the strategies that I try to put down to make the section more practical. And so I start with a challenge, and then I provide a solution or a likely solution to the situation. So the challenge: executives are risk averse to some HR initiatives. Asking for, let's say, 500,000 Ghana cedis for a company-wide rollout, it's sometimes very hard for your business leader to say yes. Sometimes very, very hard. But then, what is the solution? What can you do? So you can just if it's going to be something, you can propose a small low-cost pilot in one department that is willing to do that. So, okay, let's try this in this team. If it's able to generate the results that we are aiming for, then we can roll it up countrywide. Or if your company is multinational, let's try it in, let's say, Ghana. If it's able to work out well, then we can roll it to, let's say, Senegal or any other country that your business is operating. Then the listening tour. So here, don't just pitch. Sorry. So here, don't just pitch it, as literal as it may sound. Try and soften the ground. If there's something that you would want to do and you want to see whether your business would approve, or when you are speaking to it, you have support from the other business leaders to back you, try and run it with them. Try and run it with some of them that have a voice, or who the CEO listens to. Pick their thoughts. Oh, this is what I'm thinking we should do next year for the business, for our employees, because I believe if we do A, B, and C, it's going to do A, B, and C. What do you think? They might think through, even give you more ideas, or even help you sometimes rebrand it, or open you to certain angles that you might not have even thought of. Okay, so after you have gained their support, I know it's something that is really going to be costly in terms of funds. You've gotten their support, that you can confidently present it to whoever you report to in your organization. Then the next strategy is a 3P strategy. So influencing a CEO, or influencing your MD or your country director, whoever the HR team manager reports to. How do you influence such people? The number one thing that, even if you forget everything that I have said so far, you can do is to align your HR initiatives with their top priorities. If you forget everything I've said, don't forget this one. Whatever you want to do as HR, align it to the top priorities of your business leader. If you are able to align it so well, you are likely to get their buy-in and then their support. And in case there is resistance, they don't agree with you, or they think it is too costly. You rather can spend the money on acquiring more customers. Why should you spend it on this initiative? And then you can then go ahead or go further and respond with more data and the business impact that it would make. Then the third one is budget negotiation. When you are presenting a budget to your leadership for approval, always don't present it like as it is, but always try and look at the cost benefit analysis. We are losing our people to A, B, and C company because they really want this benefit, but currently we don't have, and it's costing us this. If we are able to bridge the gap and even start small and do something around it, most of our people would not leave, and they're going to generate A, B, and C. So always try and do your cost benefit analysis. And then some of the common pitfalls to avoid. Sometimes as HR professionals, we use a lot of HR language, but then we forget that we are not speaking to HR experts, but we are speaking to business leaders who sometimes think they know HR, but they don't. So try and minimize the HR language. Instead of you, let's say, saying self-actualization or our employee journey in a meeting, sometimes they don't even understand what you mean by employee journey. Okay, so rather you can capture it in terms that they can relate with. Retention, they understand retention. Productivity, they understand productivity. Cost, they understand cost. So translate your HR language into a language that the business understands. And one pitfall that we can also avoid is to bring problems without solutions. Okay, at the level of an HR leadership role, your business does not want you as the HR leader to add to their troubles or to add to their worries. So every problem that you are presenting to your executive team, also go with possible solutions to the problem. So if you are going to complain about we are having a lot of legal cases because our managers are not doing the right thing and A, B, and C, then come with a solution. But however, these are the things that I would want us to do to close the gap. And if you are able to do that, our legal battles would reduce or it would be over. So don't go with just problems, but go with solutions. Because as I mentioned earlier, the executive team has a lot of things to think about. They have to make sure they are meeting the demands of the board. They have to make sure their shareholders are happy. They have a lot of business things that they are thinking about. So as the HR leader, make their lives a bit easier. And then when you have a problem that you are going with it, go with a solution as well. Then sometimes you really have to know the mood or when to say what at what point in time. So there are some things that are currently happening in your business that is a headache to your country director. That's not the time to go and present an initiative that you want to do. You will receive an outright no. Okay, so go with like always understand the situation or whatever is happening, the timing of your initiatives or whatever you want to do, and present it at a time that you are likely or the person is in a very good mood and you are likely to receive a yes. And then now action plan. As I mentioned, we are going to leave this section with practical things that we can do. And I don't want us to see this so that HR digest as just an information sharing. There's no value in having information when you are not implementing it. So I try to list a practical calendar that we can all use to move up and build the influence that we would want. So from tomorrow to the next, 30 days. Thankfully, we are entering a new month, December. So for the month of December, listen and learn. So you can just use the month of December to conduct your stakeholder listening tour. So visit all the people that I try to classify them and understand their pain points, their focus areas for next year, and also use the time as well to audit the current things that you are tracking in HR. If whatever that you are tracking in terms of metrics is not what the leadership team is thinking about, or is not what is going to help your company drive their profitability targets, redo a new metrics that you want to be tracking, and then starting from next year, track those metrics. Then for next year, so from January and then February, identify your wins. So if your company is still very skeptical about the value that HR can bring, can just try it in smaller teams. If something you want to do, the business is not really willing for you to roll it out countrywide, you can roll it out in a smaller team, see the result that you will generate, and then roll it out countrywide. And then for the next 61 to 90 days, execute and then measure. Okay, so you've run the pilots. Now you have the data. Now use the wins that you have generated and convince your leadership team for more budget to roll it down on a broader scale. And then from 91 days and going, now you can then scale it across your business. So this is the end of today's section. And thank you once again, Sedat and Patience, for having me, and to Patricia, thank you so much for the opportunity once again to share.
Thank you very much, Abigail. This is very, very insightful, especially looking at the times or the season in which we are in now. A lot of companies are wrapping up. I mean, trying to strategize for the coming year, and a lot of priorities being set, and all that. And I believe one of the things that you said that um, I mean, it's one of the most important things that HRs that sit at the table need to do. And I was very glad when you mentioned it, and that was alignment. Many a times we put together our initiatives, our activities that do not align with the priorities of the business, and so we think we are working so hard, and the impact and the influence is not felt just because we are on our own and the business is also on its own. And so thank you so much for mentioning that to us, and to all HR practitioners and all HR professionals out there. This is a very insightful discussion. I was just enjoying the conversation, the presentation, right on point. How are you able to understand, getting to know the everyday of your company, and then your AOP and all that? How does your activities even influence all these things? It's very important. You need to know this. And Abigail, thank you. This is really something that we really need in this time, especially because a lot of us are wrapping up, a lot of us are planning for the coming year. Our time is fast spent, but quickly we want to give you the opportunity. If you have any question or you want to seek for any clarification, you can drop it in the comment section, and Abigail will help you. So let me go to the comment. I see Georges. Georges says, glad to be here, joining from La Paz. Thank you, Georges. And then at ms.freeman8847 says that saying no means knowing your policy, Labor Act, and the pros and cons of saying no. Thank you, Abigail. I wish we could continue this. Maybe one of these days we have to have an in-person session so that we can have a lot of time. But it was very insightful. And another thing you mentioned was studying the mood and knowing what to say at what time is also very, very important. Don't just leave your figures just there in the name of analytics. Let them get the story behind your figures. Thank you. These are very important topics. And so we will be sharing the link after the conversation. And so, if for any reason you missed the session or a portion of it because you needed to attend to something, you can listen to it over and over again. This is helpful. This is important. This is needed. If you want to have a seat at the table, or if you are seated at a table and you want your influence to be felt, this is what you do. Abigail, thank you. Thank you. I think we'll have to bring you back for part two. Thank you so much. This is Sadat HR Digest, and today we looked at leading up, how to get your influence, or how as HR professionals can build influence with executive influence. And Abigail and Sanua did a very good job for us today. Thank you. Sedat HR Digest is being sponsored by Sedat Consult, your number one HR firm, and you can rely on Sedat Consult for all your HR activities, needs, all leadership programs. Reach out to Sedat Consult on 0244 629245. 0244 629245 or 059 140 059-140-5555, and the team out there, they are ready for you, willing to help you and to sort you out. Abigail, let's draw
Okay, so pardon, as patient is having a little bit of internet connectivity challenge. Okay, so I'll just say my final words, and I want to thank Sedat HR Digest team again for the opportunity to share the little that I know concerning how we can lead up and build and influence with our executive leadership. And I really hope that we would leverage on the lessons that we have learned today, so that it just doesn't become another piece of information, but we implement it. And I'll be so happy to see how it goes on in your various organizations. So thank you so much for your time. And then we will call it a day. Have the best of the week ahead. Bye for now.